Have you ever worked harder than ever before, yet somehow stayed exactly where you are? You wake up early. You work long hours. You pay your bills. You do everything society told you to do. And yet, by the end of each month, your money disappears. Not because you are lazy, not because you are foolish, but because no one ever taught you the ancient laws that govern wealth. Maybe you've looked around and wondered, why do some people, who seem no smarter than you, build wealth with ease, while others spend their entire lives running in circles? Why do raises disappear? Why does more income often create more stress instead of freedom? And perhaps the most dangerous lie of all, I'll start saving when I make more. But what if more money was never the answer? What if wealth was never about how much you earn, but about how much you keep, how wisely you grow it, and whether you understand the rules that have governed money for thousands of years? More than 2,500 years ago, in the richest city of the ancient world, a poor man asked the same questions. He was not born powerful. He had no inheritance, no wealthy family, no secret advantage. He was simply a scribe, exhausted, underpaid, and trapped. But one decision changed everything. A single lesson transformed him from a man with nothing into the wealthiest man in Babylon. And today, that same lesson can change your life too. Listen carefully, because what you are about to hear is not just an old story. It is a financial law as powerful today as it was then. Stay with me until the end, because the final principle may completely change the way you see money forever. Most people live and die inside invisible prisons. Not prisons made of iron, but prisons made of belief. The belief that their life is fixed, that their struggle is normal, that wealth belongs to someone else. For years, Ard lived in that prison without realizing it. He blamed his small wages. He blamed the cost of living. He blamed circumstance. But deep inside, another thought had begun to grow. A dangerous thought. What if this is not fate? What if poverty was not a permanent condition, but a pattern? A pattern created by ignorance, repeated by habit, and accepted by millions. That single question changed everything. Because the moment a man begins to question the system that keeps him trapped, he stops being a victim. He becomes a seeker. And seekers eventually find answers others never do. From that day forward, Ard could no longer look at Babylon the same way. He saw the merchants differently. He saw the moneylenders differently. He saw wealthy men not as lucky, but as people following rules he had never learned. This realization did not depress him. It awakened him. For the first time in his life, Ard understood something revolutionary. If wealth has patterns, then wealth has principles. And if wealth has principles, those principles can be studied. That thought lit a fire inside him stronger than frustration ever could. No longer would he simply envy the wealthy. He would study them. No longer would he complain about his condition. He would outgrow it. This is the moment most people avoid, because it is easier to blame than to learn, easier to complain than to change, easier to say, the world is unfair, than to ask, what must I become to win within it? But Ard chose differently. He made a vow that night, one that separated him from nearly everyone around him. I will no longer stand aside while others claim the good things of life. I will claim my share. That was not greed. It was responsibility. Because there is nothing noble about spending your life under your potential. Nothing wise about earning endlessly without building. Nothing honorable about remaining financially weak when knowledge exists. And so Ard began searching for someone who understood money not as labor, but as law. Not long after, fate answered. Into the Hall of Records came Algamish, a man feared and respected throughout Babylon. He was wealthy beyond imagination, a moneylender, a master of gold, a man whose fortune seemed almost mythical. Where others saw power, Ard saw opportunity. And when the chance came, Ard did something bold enough to alter his future forever. He asked, not for charity, not for luck, not for easier work. He asked for wisdom. Teach me how you became wealthy. That question was the turning point. Because one honest question from a hungry mind can be more powerful than 10 years of blind labor. And in that moment, Ard crossed an invisible line. He was no longer merely a poor scribe. He was a student of wealth. And that decision was the true beginning of his fortune. Most people live and die inside invisible prisons. Not prisons made of iron, but prisons made of belief. The belief that their life is fixed, that their struggle is normal, that wealth belongs to someone else. For years, Ard lived in that prison without realizing it. He blamed his small wages. He blamed the cost of living. He blamed circumstance. But deep inside, another thought had begun to grow. A dangerous thought. What if this is not fate? What if poverty was not a permanent condition, but a pattern? A pattern created by ignorance, repeated by habit, and accepted by millions. That single question changed everything. Because the moment a man begins to question the system that keeps him trapped, he stops being a victim. He becomes a seeker. And seekers eventually find answers others never do. From that day forward, Ard could no longer look at Babylon the same way. He saw the merchants differently. He saw the moneylenders differently. He saw wealthy men not as lucky, but as people following rules he had never learned. This realization did not depress him. It awakened him. For the first time in his life, Ard understood something revolutionary. If wealth has patterns, then wealth has principles. And if wealth has principles, those principles can be studied. That thought lit a fire inside him stronger than frustration ever could. No longer would he simply envy the wealthy. He would study them. No longer would he complain about his condition. He would outgrow it. This is the moment most people avoid, because it is easier to blame than to learn, easier to complain than to change, easier to say, "The world is unfair," than to ask, "What must I become to win within it?" But Ard chose differently. He made a vow that night, one that separated him from nearly everyone around him. I will no longer stand aside while others claim the good things of life. I will claim my share. That was not greed. It was responsibility. Because there is nothing noble about spending your life under your potential. Nothing wise about earning endlessly without building. Nothing honorable about remaining financially weak when knowledge exists. And so Ard began searching for someone who understood money not as labor, but as law. Not long after, fate answered. Into the Hall of Records came Algamish, a man feared and respected throughout Babylon. He was wealthy beyond imagination, a moneylender, a master of gold, a man whose fortune seemed almost mythical. Where others saw power, Ard saw opportunity. And when the chance came, Ard did something bold enough to alter his future forever. He asked, not for charity, not for luck, not for easier work. He asked for wisdom. Teach me how you became wealthy. That question was the turning point, because one honest question from a hungry mind can be more powerful than 10 years of blind labor. And in that moment, Ard crossed an invisible line. He was no longer merely a poor scribe. He was a student of wealth, and that decision was the true beginning of his fortune. Algamish was not a man known for kindness. He was sharp, demanding, a master of money, and a ruthless observer of human weakness. When Ard asked to learn his secret, Algamish did not offer comfort. He offered truth, a truth so simple. Most people ignore it their entire lives. After Ard completed the impossible task of copying the great law through the night, Algamish looked at him and said, I found the road to wealth when I decided that a part of all I earned was mine to keep. At first, Ard was confused. That was it? No magical formula? No royal connection? No hidden treasure? Just one sentence? But that was precisely why it was powerful. Because wealth rarely begins with complexity. It begins with one disciplined decision. Algamish looked into Ard's eyes and dismantled the illusion that traps nearly everyone. You pay the food seller. You pay the sandal maker. You pay the cloth merchant. You pay for shelter. You pay for pleasure. But do you pay yourself? The question hit like a weapon, because Ard suddenly saw the painful truth. For years, he had worked tirelessly, only to build the wealth of others. He was earning, but not keeping. Working, but not progressing. Living, but never building. And this is the financial tragedy of most people. They spend their lives acting as employees to the world, without ever becoming employers of their own money. Then Algamish revealed the law that would transform Ard forever. Keep at least 1/10 of all you earn, not what remains after spending, not what is convenient. First, before bills, before indulgence, before excuses. First, because what comes first grows. What comes last disappears. That 1/10 was not deprivation. It was a declaration that Ard's future mattered, a declaration that his labor would finally serve him, a declaration that he would no longer spend every ounce of his life feeding present desires while starving future freedom. Algamish then placed a single coin before him and said, "This is not merely money. It is a seed. Plant it, and it becomes a tree. Ignore it, and you remain in the desert." In that moment, Ard understood something most never do. Wealth is not built by giant leaps. It is built by small acts of ownership, repeated consistently. The first coin saved is more than currency. It is proof that you are no longer just a consumer, but a builder. So when Ard received his next payment, he did something radical. He kept 1 coin from every 10, and though fear whispered, "You need that now," wisdom answered, "No, I need freedom later." That was the birth of his wealth, not in gold, but in habit, because the first law of wealth is eternal. If you do not pay yourself first, you will always work for those who do. For a while, Ard felt powerful. For the first time in his life, he was keeping part of what he earned. His hidden coins began to grow. One became many. Many became possibility. And with possibility came temptation. Because earning money is one battle. Keeping it is another. Growing it wisely, that is where most people fail. After a year of disciplined saving, Ard looked at his small pile of coins and felt something dangerous. Impatience. He no longer wanted to simply save. He wanted wealth faster. And this is where countless futures are destroyed. Not by poverty, but by the hunger for shortcuts. When a brickmaker he knew offered him an exciting opportunity to buy rare jewels from distant lands, Ard saw what many still see today. A chance to get ahead quickly. The promise sounded convincing. The profits sounded easy. The vision sounded irresistible. So Ard handed over his precious savings, his seed, his future, and he lost it all. The jewels were fake, worthless glass. In one painful mistake, the young scribe learned a brutal truth. Not all advice is equal, and ignorance is expensive. When Algamish returned and discovered what had happened, he did not comfort Ard. He corrected him. "If you would know about jewels, ask the jewel merchant. If you would know about sheep, ask the shepherd." Simple, but life-changing. Because most people do not lose money because they are stupid. They lose money because they seek financial guidance from the unqualified. Friends with opinions, dreamers with theories, salesmen with incentives, crowds chasing hype. And when blind people lead the blind, savings disappear. This is one of the oldest financial traps in history. Taking wealth advice from those who have never built wealth. But Ard's lesson was not over. Even after he learned to seek wiser counsel, another danger remained, consuming the children of his gold. When his investments finally began producing returns, Ard celebrated too early. Fine wine, luxurious food, beautiful clothing. He spent his profits as quickly as they came. Again, Algamish intervened. "You are eating the children of your savings." In other words, he was destroying the very system meant to free him. And here lies another hidden trap. Many people build income only to increase lifestyle. They earn more, spend more, desire more, and remain trapped. The wealthy think differently. They do not immediately consume growth. They protect it, reinvest it, multiply it, because true wealth is not built by looking rich, but by owning assets that keep producing. Ard finally understood. Wealth is fragile in its early stages. Like a young tree, it must be protected before it can provide shade. And so he learned the fourth law. Avoid bad counsel. Reject false opportunities. Do not consume your future for present pleasure, because it is not enough to earn. It is not enough to save. You must also protect your seed from foolishness, ego, and greed. For many lose their fortune not because life was unfair, but because they destroyed it themselves. By now, Ard was no longer the same man. He had learned to save. He had learned to protect. He had learned that foolishness could destroy years of discipline. But Algamish had one final revelation. Saving alone would never make him truly wealthy, because money hidden is safer than wasted. But money invested wisely becomes power. This was the lesson that separated savers from builders. One day, Algamish placed a single gold coin in Ard's hand and asked, "What is this?" Ard answered, "Gold." But Algamish shook his head. "No, this is a worker." He explained that every coin Ard kept was not merely money. It was a servant, a laborer, a silent employee capable of earning more coins. And every coin that servant earned could also become a servant. This was the true magic of wealth. Gold could reproduce, not by luck, not by magic, but through disciplined multiplication. For the first time, Ard understood a principle that still governs wealth today. The rich do not only work for money, they make money work for them. This changed everything, because labor has limits. A man can only work so many hours, only earn so much energy, only trade so much time. But money can work endlessly, while you sleep, while you learn, while you age. And once Ard understood this, he stopped seeing coins as objects to spend and began seeing them as employees to deploy. So he invested carefully, not recklessly, not emotionally, not based on rumors. He chose opportunities he understood. He sought counsel from proven minds. He focused not on speed, but on safety and repetition. And slowly, his coins began producing more coins. 10 became 20. 20 became 50. 50 became 100. Then something extraordinary happened. Ard discovered that wealth grows fastest when you do not interrupt it. Every return he earned, he reinvested. He did not harvest too soon. He did not feast on early fruit. He kept planting. And this is where most people fail. They want the appearance of wealth before the foundation of wealth. They buy symbols instead of systems. But Ard chose differently. He built systems, and systems create freedom. Years passed, and what began as 1/10 of a poor scribe's wages became an expanding army of golden servants. Each coin worked. Each return reproduced. Each cycle strengthened the next. This is the ancient force most people underestimate. Time plus discipline creates abundance. Not instantly, but inevitably. Ard was no longer surviving month to month. He had built momentum, and momentum is where ordinary effort becomes extraordinary wealth. He finally understood. The purpose of money is not consumption. It is creation. Money, when mastered, buys freedom. Freedom buys time. Time buys life. And so the poor scribe became something rare. A man whose wealth no longer depended solely on his hands, because his gold had learned to labor beside him. That is when Ard stopped being merely a worker and began becoming wealthy. Time reveals what discipline hides. At first, Ard's transformation was invisible. To Babylon, he still looked like the same humble scribe. He walked the same streets. He wore modest robes. He worked with the same steady hands. But beneath the surface, everything had changed. Because true wealth is often built quietly, long before it becomes visible. While others spent their wages proving success, Ard spent years building it. He no longer thought like the desperate. He no longer chased appearances. He no longer envied luxury. He no longer confused income with wealth. He had evolved. His mind, once trapped by survival, now operated by principle. Every coin had purpose. Every investment had intention. Every decision served a larger future. And this is where real transformation always begins. Not when your income changes, but when your identity changes. Ard was no longer a poor man trying to earn more. He had become a wealth builder. This difference is everything, because poor thinking asks, how much can I spend? Wealth thinking asks, how much can I build? Years passed, and Algamish, the old money lender who first planted the seed, watched carefully. He saw what few men ever achieve. Ard had not merely copied financial laws. He had embodied them. He lived below his means. He multiplied his gold. He protected his future. He mastered patience. And because of this, opportunity began seeking Ard. This is another secret most people never realize. When you prove you can manage small wealth, larger wealth trusts you. Eventually, Algamish invited Ard to manage his vast estates in distant lands. This was no small task. Land, trade, resources, responsibility. But Ard was ready, because wealth is not truly about money. It is about stewardship. A foolish man with fortune will lose it. A disciplined man with principles will expand it. And Ard expanded everything he touched. When Algamish died, Ard inherited not just gold, but position. Not just property, but power. Yet his greatest inheritance was neither land nor coin. It was understanding. He knew what many wealthy heirs never learn: how wealth is created, how wealth is preserved, how wealth is multiplied. That knowledge made him unstoppable. He had once been a man who carved laws for others. Now he lived by laws that made him extraordinary. And so Ard became known throughout Babylon as one of its wealthiest men. Not because he was lucky, not because he was chosen, not because he worked harder than everyone else, but because he learned what most ignore. Wealth is a system, a predictable system, and those who master that system change their destiny forever. The greatest transformation in Ard's life was not from poor to rich. It was from blind to aware. Because once a person understands the laws of wealth, poverty is no longer a mystery. It becomes a choice repeated by ignorance. And Ard had chosen differently. He chose knowledge. He chose discipline. He chose delayed gratification. He chose freedom. And that changed everything. My friend, this ancient story was never just about Babylon. It was about you. Because even now, thousands of years later, most people are still living exactly as Ard once lived. They work. They earn. They spend. They repeat. Year after year. Without ever asking why wealth continues to escape them. But now you know. Wealth is not reserved for the lucky. It is not reserved for the privileged. And it is certainly not reserved only for those with massive incomes. Wealth belongs to those who follow its laws. The laws are simple, but not easy. Pay yourself first. Protect what you keep. Make your money multiply. And never sacrifice your future for temporary pleasure. This is how freedom begins. Not with one giant breakthrough, but with one small decision repeated consistently. One coin saved. One wise investment. One disciplined month. One patient year. That is how seeds become trees. And here is your challenge. The next time money enters your hands, do not treat yourself like the last person who deserves to be paid. Before bills, before entertainment, before excuses, keep a part of it, even if it is small, because the amount matters less than the identity it builds. You are teaching yourself one of the most powerful truths in existence. I am not merely earning to survive. I am building to become free. Do this long enough, and your life will begin to change. Not overnight, but inevitably. 5 years from now, you can still be where you are today, working endlessly, wondering where it all went. Or you can stand beneath the shade of a wealth tree you chose to plant. The choice is the same one Ard faced, and the law remains unchanged. A part of all you earn is yours to keep. So plant your seed today. Protect it, grow it, multiply it, and one day, what feels impossible now will become your reality. Because wealth does not begin when you earn more. Wealth begins the moment you decide you will never again spend everything you earn. Make that decision today, and your future self will thank you forever.